Mom deserves the best, and there's no better place to shop for Mother's Day than Whole Foods Market. They're your destination for unbeatable savings, from premium gifts to show-stopping flowers and irresistible desserts. Start by saving 33% with Prime on all body care and candles. Then get a 15-stem bunch of tulips for just $9.99 each with Prime. Round out Mom's menu with festive rosé, irresistible berry chantilly cake, and more special treats. Come celebrate Mother's Day at Whole Foods Market.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Underrated Movie Podcast, a podcast about films that are underrated, underappreciated, and ones that have slipped under the radar and passed most people by. Today, we are going to be starting off a brand new mini-series called Extended Editions, looking at alternate cuts of films, whether they be director's cuts, assembly cuts, what have you. And this one is going to be Dr. Sleep. Joining me to talk about Dr. Sleep is an old friend, a person who is quite familiar with this podcast, Alan Torres, returning once again. How's it going, Alan?
Hey, what's up, everybody? Glad to be back. I'm excited to do this. Really can't wait to get back into the underrated chair and talk about some movies.
Yes, the chair has missed you, so it's good to have you back. I'm really glad I could, we talked about this miniseries and what movie you wanted to cover, and one of the ones we threw out was Dr. Sleep, and I know you're a big King fan.
Hell yeah.
So, what about Dr. Sleep, the director's cut, specifically, the 3-hour version, did you want to talk about?
Well, oh my god. See, it's so funny, because I saw the original one when it came out, and I dug it. I thought it was really good. And then when they did this cut, I was really excited to watch it, and I missed it when I got on streaming. And this one, now rewatching it and kind of getting into it, I actually kind of want to know what the changes were. I don't know if you looked into it or what maybe the changes were. I feel like it was just more. It felt longer, but it had a good pacing to it, and it also felt like there was more. I don't know. It wasn't like a big difference. I didn't feel like I saw a lot of things that were different. I just felt like it paced better. It flowed better, and I was like, okay, cool. I feel like the opening sequences were new. I feel like a lot of the new stuff might have been in the beginning, but as someone who read the book, it's kind of like seeing the original version, then this, and then remembering the book. I'm kind of like, I don't remember what happened where, except the ending of it. Mm-hmm. But all of it, I'm kind of like, wait, what happened here? What happened there? Kind of thing. And yeah, it was really cool. I mean, Flanagan he gets King. That's all. That's one of the big things. Yeah. So, I actually want to hear your take.
Yeah. So, I forgot to say at the top of the show, but yeah, this is Dr. Sleep, directed by Mike Flanagan. It's actually based, of course, on the book by Stephen King, and it's also a sequel to The Shining, one of the most famous horror movies of all time, with Ewan McGregor in the central role as the grown-up Danny Torrance. And yeah, I like this movie quite a bit. When I was trying to figure out what movies to do for this miniseries, because I really wanted to highlight cuts of films that are underrated, like movies that people might be like, yeah, I didn't like that one, or didn't do super well, or might not have done whatever the box office, but there's another quote-unquote better version out there that maybe people might not know about. And because I did like the theatrical Dr. Sleep. I watched it, I think during lockdown or something, because it was one of those ones I heard. I was like, oh yeah, there's a sequel to The Shining, And I was a little bit skeptical at first going in, because I knew that King fucking hates The Shining movie, and I love The Shining movie, so I was like, all right, that's got to be a tough needle to thread, where it's like, you got to make a sequel to this thing, but the creator hates the original, but you got to still honor the book adaptation that hates the original, but there's so many people that like the original, so you got to honor that. So it was like a real tightrope the walk. And I think that with the theatrical, they did a pretty good job with it. But my big problem originally watching it was that it felt like the end where they go to the Overlook just kind of it just feels tacked on. It feels like, oh well, we need to get back to the Shining. We need to get back to the Overlook, and they just have just a pretty just kind of out of nowhere excuse, like to just go back there. Comes out of left field. I know that King initially was opposed to that until Flanagan kind of pitched him on the idea a little bit.
And I have a little bit of information on that too.
But yeah, with the extended cut, I feel like a lot of the stuff that was added to it feels like things that were really tied into The Shining, and it really made it feel much more like a sequel to The Shining, and it made that ending, that last 30 minutes when they are back at the Overlook, it felt like it came, instead of coming out of nowhere, it felt like inevitable. It felt like this is where this guy was always going to end up back to. This hotel was going to pull him in. And the one thing I didn't like about this movie just getting made is because it answers, and this is something I think I've mentioned before on the podcast, it's like, in the original Shining movie, it's like, is it ghosts, or is it alcoholism, or is this, like, what is it? Who knows? And in this one, it's like, well, it was ghosts. And you're like, okay. But it does still thematically tie back into the, like, whole alcoholism, and when he goes and talks to the ghost of his dad. And there's a lot more stuff in the extended cut with his mom, Wendy, who she's actually in this, played by one of Mike Flanagan's muses, Alex Esso, who I'm a really big fan of because of Midnight Mass. She's on that show. But yeah, I really thought that this movie significantly improved because of all that added context. It's, instead of feeling like a cheap ending that was just trying to capitalize on, like, oh, this is the sequel, we've got to tie it back in somehow. It was all connected. The theatrical didn't have chapters. This one had chapters. There was just the different chunks, which also made it feel like, like how it starts with the first chapter starts with old ghosts. And you see just there's the wallpaper of the iconic wallpaper of the Overlook Hotel, just kind of against it. You see Danny wheeling around, talking to his mom. And it's like, yeah, these old ghosts, the Overlook has been haunting him throughout his entire life. You get that context so much more in the director's cut, that when he goes back and ultimately, dies there, but is able to blow up the hotel and take it down with him, it really felt a lot more therapeutic almost. It's like, yeah, he went back, he blew all that stuff up. He doesn't drink when his dad's offering him. So I really went from a movie that I thought was pretty good but flawed to a real awesome horror masterpiece almost.
Yeah, and you know what? I want to kind of fill in a little bit of the blanks. Someone who's read The Shining, Doctor Sleep, and seen the films. This is where Mike Flanagan is like a genius. Where I appreciate him so much now as a filmmaker, and like even when I first saw it, I was like, "Oh, this is pretty cool." I wasn't really a big Flanagan fan just yet, and I was like, "I like this. It did a good job." And seeing this whole 3-hour version, you start to see where I get how he was able to convince Stephen King to go back to the Overlook, because in the original Shining novel, the Overlook is destroyed. It's blown up. Throughout the book, it has all the similar themes like family trauma, alcoholism, but there's this reoccurring boiler room. And this is where I thought he was really clever and did a really cool job. So the boiler room, it's kind of seen throughout the novel, and then finally at the end, spoilers for Shining. People haven't read the book. Instead of the big climax happening in the maze, it's actually the hotel explodes, and Jack Torrance dies there, and Dick Halloran actually didn't die. He, with the Shining, goes to save Wendy and Danny, and they escape, and yeah, that's kind of how it ends. And then this, what I thought was super clever that I really loved, is that he was able to show love to both the original Shining Kubrick film and the novel. And I bet him bringing up the boiler and being like, we're going to destroy the Overlook, is a way to kind of put both endings of the books and the movies together and combine them into this super, like, almost strangely I don't want to say meta because it's just he was able to make a perfect cocktail of like, all right, so the people who come into this movie going, well, the climax of Doctor Sleep, it's just the ruins. There's nothing there. It's a campsite for the True Knot. But instead in this one, he's like, well, what we're going to do is the showdown is going to be there. You're still going to get the overlook. You're still going to get all those cool, homage shots, which I was a little same on your boat. I was like, this is a little tacked on, but as someone who read it, I was like, I get it. This is the only way you can solve that problem. And then you also get the boiler room explosion and the fire that brings down the overlook. So I was like, he was able to satisfy everybody, like Kubrick fans, novel fans, and then Dr. Sleep novel fans as well. So that's where I was like, holy shit, like you're a genius. And then seeing the flashbacks, like you said, showing him talking to Dick Halloran in the beginning, I don't think that was in the original, right? Him talking to him on the bench, and he's
yeah. I think there was like it was a very short scene, I think, in the theatrical edition.
Yeah, because I feel like that scene was way longer right now when I watched it. And yeah, I thought that's where he did a phenomenal job, where he was able to make everybody happy. For me personally, I was like, dude, you killed it. Like, you were able to knock every kind of door and be like, boom, here you go. And there was even plenty of, Stephen King references all over. The bus that he rides is Tet transporting, Ka-Tet, Dark Tower. Even Dick Halloran, I know for sure that wasn't in the theatrical cut where he's like, Ka's just a wheel. It's another big Dark Tower thing. So I felt that was really cool of him being able to connect other King's works as well as that. So yeah, I dug it a lot.
Yeah, it's amazing that he was able to pull that off and to basically, like you said, satisfy everyone, because usually when you get to, I was like expecting it to be like how is he gonna pull this off? Even the theatrical, I thought, was better than I could have expected. But yeah, like with the extended, it really feels so much more like of a piece where it's like, yeah, if you are a fan of the original Shining, like most horror fans are, you're gonna appreciate it. But also, if you're a fan of Stephen King's 1997 version that most people don't like, but is way more accurate to the book, you'll probably still be happy. So he managed to, and if you've just read the books, I think even that it manages to pull off really well. So yeah, all of that's really well done. But like, beyond just the extended stuff, what did you think of the movie?
Oh, I loved it. I mean, obviously there's a lot of changes. Not every adaptation is going to be perfect, but he was able to capture so many scenes very well. Like he was able to capture the scene, the opening scene with Danny, where he's at the bar and then like he sleeps with that chick and then he finds a baby and he takes the money. Like he was able to capture that tone so well.
That baby is creepy as fuck, where it's just like, no one has found us. You're like, boo.
It was great. And then, I feel like the alcoholism parts, he was able to capture really well. Cause I remember that was like very powerful in the book. Like there was so many times I was reading it where I was like, whoa, like it felt very personal. Like it felt like I was reading something. It felt like King was trying to say something about his own life and, the things that he was going through. And I was like, whoa, like this is personal. And I feel like Flanagan was able to capture a lot of that really well too. The scene, one of the big highlights that I really loved, and I felt like he took it right out of my brain, is when, Rose the Hat, she's like flying over and she's trying to look for Abra. And she's like kind of looking over like the town and everything, and those cool shots of her like floating. It's kind of like she had that cool, creepy vampire vibe of like the older kind of scary vampire movies where they're like floating up to the window and they're just still. But this was more of like a psychic kind of vampire floating, and it was really good, really creepy, and just a gorgeous shot. And yeah, he really, really caught those scenes very well.
Yeah, I agree. I think Flanagan he's a master of horror and terror. He's just always making just this greatest, spookiest shit. Like he knows how to make something that will just get you to your core. I think you're really on the money about all the scenes dealing with the alcoholism. Because like I said, that was the thing in this movie. It's like, okay, were they literally ghosts, or was it like literally? It's like, okay, well, he's still dealing with all that alcoholism stuff. I love that you get to see his progress. He starts as like this homeless drifter, alcoholic with his big beard, and then he's kind of turned his life around, and he's trying not to fall back off the wagon for the whole movie. I love that scene where he's just like looking at the bottle and he throws it against the wall, and then there's that extended scene where his dad is now kind of taken on the Grady role, and he's like, oh yeah, Jack Daniels, that was my dad's drink or whatever, and he's like, it's like a warm, it's like I don't remember what he says, but it's like a warm hug or something like that. And he pushes it over to him, and just seeing him struggle with that, his speech that he gives at the beginning where he's got the chip and he's like, this is an 8-year chip. I saw my dad with a chip like this once. He fell off the wagon. He never got to. I think that a lot of this stuff with him dealing with his dad's alcoholism and how he fell back into it, and a lot of the stuff they add with him and his mom, and because I don't think that this. It's been a minute since I've seen it, and I didn't see it when I was looking over some notes, but the stuff with his mom just can't like look at him, and all that is just, it's really heartbreaking because she sees his dad in him, and he starts to, as he drinks, see his dad in him too, and he's like, that's how we could be together. Is I would drink and I would feel him, and it even references him breaking his arm in The Shining. I thought all that was really, really powerful stuff, and I think that's what a good horror movie could do. It's like, yeah, these are ghosts we're dealing with, but as Dick Halloran says, the memories are the real ghosts.
Oh, absolutely. And I think one of my big favorite, I think Flanagan was trying to, I think he was trying to do his own thing with like making a little, because even the book is like very in your face about like, there's steam vampires, psychic steam vampires. And I know the Shining film is a little bit more nuanced. It's more not in your face. Like you said earlier, is it alcoholism? Is it ghost? And I felt like he was taking inspiration from the Shining book, where the terrors are a little bit more in your face. Like you go, yeah, I think this hotel is definitely haunted. But I think he was still trying to do a happy medium of like, I want to keep those themes, but also not lose you to the funny, wacky little like, well, we got to go. I mean, they're terrifying scenes. Don't get me wrong. Let's abduct a kid and take his steam, essentially. But I feel like he does such a well job where like it doesn't feel silly almost and campy. Because even when I was reading the book, I was like, steam? Okay, I guess that's a cool little twist. It sounded kind of silly, but in the film, I feel like he did it a little better. Like it was the execution was better.
Yeah, totally. And just talking about all that steam stuff and the psychic vampires, I think that they are absolutely incredible villains. Like at first they seem kind of kooky or whatever, but I love it. It's like you just see the tip of the iceberg. It's like, yeah, they're like nomads. They've been around forever. They make references that they were like, there's the True Knot had been like every nomad in history, like traveling Romani in Eastern Europe, and they would travel on camelback in Africa, and those nomads, and they've just been around forever. And the old guy who dies, like he saw kings rise and fall, and he'd been around since Rome, and all this stuff they mention. It just gives you just enough to make them like, these guys are powerful, they've been around forever. And at first I'm like, okay, like whatever, it's Rebecca Ferguson wearing a hat, she is so good. She's like, and she's doing this like affectation with her voice where she's whispering, kind of, but like I can't even imitate it because it's so haunting. It's like creepy. It's just like someone who's been around forever, and she knows she doesn't have to speak at a loud volume to terrify you. She's great. All her cronies are great. I think that Snakebite Andy? Snakebite Andy, yeah. She was really cool. I thought she was like an interesting character because at first you're like, oh, you think she's like a victim because she's like 15 and she gets taken by these people, and then they have that scene where they like give her the steam, and you're like, oh, wow, this is scary, And it opens. Both versions open with them abducting that little girl, and it's like this is the last of her when they induct Andy. So it's like kind of terrifying when you see her get snatched, and you're like, oh, it sets the tone really well. And then later on, when you have Baseball Boy, Jacob Tremblay, who terrific young actor, that horrifying scene, like when you see that kid just just getting like tortured and they're sucking up like that. The steam, you think, oh, it'd be goofy, but like when it's coming out, they're just like sucking it up. Like it is brutal. It is horrifying. And a lot of movies, even horror movies, shy away from violence against kids. This one, no, fuck that. They're gonna like let you know how awful these people are. Like these are bad guys. And I do love that they and it's like, yeah, like they managed to take most of them out with some guns, which I thought was cool. But they're like, yeah, we probably can't beat Rose the Hat. We've got to. The only way to take her out is to take her to this worst place, and it kind of makes that ending flow a little bit more,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that kid. Holy shit, man! He was so good. He's been in something else, and he was really good in that too.
Yeah, he was in The Room. Was like he got an Oscar. Like that was his breakout. Was he was in, or just not The Room, just Room. And he like got an Oscar nomination for it.
I don't know if it was that one, but I don't know. I just remember that he's like, wow, like that kid is really good. He's so powerful. That scene, like his screams were like I remember watching that scene in theaters, and I can feel like everybody was really uncomfortable. Like everyone was kind of like, oh, this is kind of weird. And even though like you don't see like him getting stabbed or you don't see the gore of it all, just blood splatter here and there, it still was like uncomfortable for everybody. Everybody's like, fuck, dude, it's a kid. And I think it's very scary, especially if like I'm not a parent, but I'm assuming a lot of parents don't want to hear that their kid left a baseball game and just got abducted, and never see them again and everything. And that whole like abduction scene, I was like, damn. And it's even scarier because at least like, I mean, yeah, if, people don't have powers or anything, but it's even scarier the fact that somebody was able to like bring him in seconds. Like it was like, boom, hypnosis, psychic, vampire hypnosis, boom, you're in, let's go. Like that's already terrifying because you already know. They didn't even have to show the scene of him getting tortured, but still, I mean, they had to really, twist the blade in you.
Yeah, totally. And, it really sets the stage for just making you worry about Abra. She's a kid. She's going to be in danger too. And Danny realizing that he has to protect her. And I love the scenes when, first of all, like when they dig him up and like Cliff Curtis, great in this too, by the way, and sees the body, he just kind of like goes and pukes. And then, when they show Evie's dad using like this, like he just freaking the fuck out and he has to like take a drink and his like hands is all shaking. It's like, yeah, we saw that too. Like that was incredible. There's this really great behind the scenes picture. I don't know if you've seen it of Jacob Tremblay like covered in blood and he's just giving like a thumbs up right after filming that scene.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I remember seeing that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of those things. It's like, okay, good. Like I mean, that like the kid didn't really get hurt, but it like kind of when you see that, it takes your mind out of it because yeah, it's a really terrifying, powerful scene because there's a lot of really great imagery in this, and a lot of it stands on its own. But at the end, I love that they bring back a lot of that great imagery from The Shining. All the creepy ghosts and stuff like that, and like the twins and like the blowjob bear and fucking everything.
Blowjob bear.
Or like Rebecca Ferguson when she like walks in and she sees like the elevator of blood and she's just like kind of gives it a look. She's like, that's interesting. So the production design of this is top notch and phenomenal. It's crazy they were able to recreate all the stuff in The Shining so accurately. Because at first, like even with like the characters, like the True Knot, they look, at first glance you're like, oh, they're kind of goofy, and then you're like, no, they're scary. Like that hat, which you think is like, oh, it's just a funny hat. Like she's this like. It's like, oh, she's old. She's been around for a while. She's seen a lot of shit, and she's done a lot of shit. She's killed a lot of people, a lot of children. Just, it's freaky,
Mm-hmm. And what I really like, going back to the production about it, is I loved that, he made the homages. He kind of made sure to stick true to how like Kubrick filmed everything, but only at the Overlook. I appreciated that. I appreciated that he wasn't like, I'm going to make the whole movie Kubrick. Like, I'm glad he wasn't like, I'm going to do exactly what I'm glad he was more like, I respect the source and I want to keep it there specifically. Everything, like even with the music, because you can tell there's a difference. Like from when they're all over the, on the East Coast, and then when they get to Colorado, the music changes, the tone almost changes, where it feels like you're almost watching a different movie at one point. And I really appreciated that. That he didn't do it the whole time, because it would feel weird. And I like when he would use it sparingly. Like there's the one scene where he's where Dan's talking to Bruce Greenwood's character in the office, and that's like completely almost a shot for shot of when Jack Nicholson's Jack is talking about the position at the hotel with the hotel manager. If you look at it, even if you like see a side by side,
I didn't even put that together, but yeah, now that you say that,
because when I was watching it, I was like, oh shit, that's what it. Because like there's a familiarity, but I like that he doesn't throw it in your face. He makes sure to like it's just like a quick like, here you go, but just in the back of your mind, you're like, this looks. So it's reminding me of something, and then when you get to the end, you're like, oh shit, okay, like here's the big stuff.
I was gonna say, because yeah, it's sprinkled throughout all the little bits and moments, but like you brought up the music, it's very much a different score and everything, because the ominous tones and everything are so synonymous with The Shining. But then when they finally get back, they drive up that big mountain, and it's they take a while to get there, even when they're driving, and then you start to hear the bum 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 again. You're like, oh shit! You're like, it's fucking on. They're back here, and they showed the restraint. They don't show that until the last 30 minutes. They don't play that song. It really makes it that much more powerful when they're like, all right, we're fucking back at the Overlook. I'm glad that it wasn't just a whole movie that was set there or something like that. It was really like, this is the end. This is inevitable. This is where you all were going to end up. This thing that's been haunting you your entire life, that turned your dad crazy and killed him. It eventually, kind of probably took its toll, and your mom killed her. It's been coming after you now too. Getting to go there to exorcise the demons from it and to blow it up, and all the while taking out this other malevolent entity and helping someone else, and then seeing him, transition into the role of Dick Halloran that he had played early in his life, how he had sacrificed himself and then taught him about The Shining and then spoke to him as a ghost. Now he's doing the same exact thing for Abra, and I thought that was a really cool full circle moment.
It really was, yeah. I noticed that right around halfway where I was like, oh shit, because I think the book doesn't do, it's kind of a similar, but I feel like the movie again did that better. I think it had the benefit of that Dick Halloran died and the Shining film, and then he kind of became that like guardian angel, shining ghost kind of thing, and then it gets passed on and I also applaud him for the ending where it's sad, but I think it's deserved that Dan dies. He's destroying. He's like, I'm getting rid of this trauma. We're done with it, and he gets to see his mom one last time. I'm hoping that she was like a shining ghost or whatever, or just a ghost is fine, I guess. But because in the book he doesn't die, he actually lives. There is some Jack Torrance a little bit in the book, but it's a little more like the movie's more in your face. The movie's more, but the movie it makes sense for the movie because it's jumping off of the Kubrick Shining, but. Yeah, it was really sad that he had to die too, but it also makes sense that now he's like the new Dick Halloran, and like now Abra's the new Dan, and it's going to go on from there. So that was really cool. I love that. Even though again it was changes, he was able to find a good change where it was like cause the wheel. It was another circle and another circle, boom, boom, boom. It kept going. So that was awesome.
Yeah, and just like we said. A lot of really great horror imagery and just scares and thrills in this. Really connected. The book, which I think, correct me if I'm wrong, was part of the book the reason for King writing it, because he was like, all right, well, I didn't like what they did with my Shining movie, so now I'm going to write my own sequel, and it's going to be totally different. Is that kind of accurate?
I don't know, to be honest, because it just kind of came out I remember the big hype was that it was just a sequel to The Shining, and
Mhm.
even like, King fans were like, "What the fuck? Why would he do this? Like, you're gonna ruin it." Blah blah blah. I think he just had more to tell because, but like I said earlier, I felt like it was personal. Like I feel like
Mhm.
maybe he just had something inside that he wanted to tell, and felt that this might have been the best way to do it. Because I mean,
Mhm.
I don't know if there was plans for Warner Brothers to do a sequel to The Shining, where he was like, "Oh fuck that, let me go write it real fast," and boom, here you go, here's my proto manuscript for the movie or something. But
Mhm.
yeah, I don't know.
Because I do know that like apparently he had like a poll up with like a few different options, and like one of them was like a sequel to The Shining, and it just yeah, I guess what I should say is like it felt like something that had always bothered King, that that The Shining was so popular and people liked it despite him not being on board, and it felt like something he tried to exercise a couple times, like we mentioned the '97 series. And then, obviously there's this book, which wasn't may or may not have been as much of a response to the movie. But yeah, I'm glad that everything was finally, everyone could finally be happy with
Mhm.
King, and King fans and movie fans could all finally be happy with this thing. One other thing too that I want to mention, kind of changing gears here, is what I really liked about this is the Grim Reaper cat. I liked the Grim Reaper cat,
Oh hell yeah.
and that he, it's like, oh yeah, that's why he's Doctor Sleep, because he can tell when people are gonna die. He said he's able to use his shine to kind of talk to them, and I love that it kind of made, in retrospect, the fact that his mom called him Doc, like a Bugs Bunny reference, and then him becoming Doctor Sleep. I was like, oh shit, Doc, yeah, okay, and then they call
Mhm.
him Doc later on. I thought that was a really cool connection to all of that.
Yeah, that was really cool. And I remember, like, did they call him Doc in the Kubrick movie?
They do, yeah. Like it's a big thing,
Okay.
because Dick Halloran is just like, "Hey, Doc," and he's like, "How'd you know they called me Doc?" And he's like, "I can read your mind or whatever." And that's like the first Shining conversation they have.
Okay. It's been a while since I've seen the movie. So I couldn't remember. I was like, did he say it? I need to rewatch it just because I have to. Because it's funny enough, I wasn't a fan of it when I first saw it as a kid, but I think I didn't appreciate it. And
Mm-hmm.
then later on, I saw it again, and I was like, okay, this is good. I was like, all
Mm-hmm.
right, I like this. And then I went and read the book, and then I was like, okay, I like the book more, but the movie's still pretty good. Like it's what I like about them both is like it's fire and ice. The
Mm,
book is way more
literally.
explosive. Yeah, the book is way more explosive, while the film is more chilly and icy and cold, and especially with their climaxes. But yeah, I wasn't sure if they were calling it, but yeah, now it's a great tie-in. I don't know if King thought of that originally, or maybe he was just like, "Fuck it, low hanging fruit, makes perfect sense."
Yeah, yeah, no, and yeah, because I'm really, like I said, I haven't read The Shining or Doctor Sleep or anything, but huge fan of that original film. I think it's one of my favorite horror films of all time. So what's your history with The Shining though?
Well, like I said, it was funny because like everyone talked about, oh my god, it's one of the scariest films of all time,
Mm-hmm.
and I think I was too young to appreciate it. I think I
Mm-hmm.
went in going, let's see if it's scary, let's see if it gets me. And then I saw it, and again, though I did see it on TV, so there was probably a lot of stuff cut out.
Mm.
And I was like, all right, well, that was fine, I guess. That was okay. And then I was kind of like, well, now I see why Stephen King doesn't like it. It's fucking trash. But and then later on, it showed up again, and then I watched it, and I actually was like, all right, let me sit down and actually watch it. And I was like, oh shit, like this is good. I think I matured more too as like a film viewer. I think sometimes I was like watching stuff to challenge myself to be like, let's see how hard it'll go. And
Mm.
then this time it was more like I want to appreciate it for what it is, and the Kubrick of it all. And I
Yeah.
dug it. And then that kind of inspired me to that, and like because I think I had rewatched that and the miniseries, and I was like, damn, you know what? I want to just read these, and that's when I like fully jumped in and started reading King, and I was like, all right, I love this stuff. And yeah, then funny enough, like right when I finished reading The Shining, he was like, Doctor Sleep's coming out, and I was like, oh, perfect, cool, I'm gonna get that, and immediately read that one. So Yeah, that's kind of my history with it. I feel like I really love the book more. So I know people give me flack because they're like, "Oh, it's because fucking Stephen King doesn't like the original," and I'm like, "No, I like the more explosive part, and I like that the hauntings and everything a lot more in your face."
Mm-hmm.
It's because I feel like the book is a little more scarier in that sense, but the film does a great job of being that slow, creeping terror, that like perfect build up, and I feel like it's the archetype for a lot of now haunted house movies that we see. With the book too, when the biggest reason, and I think I haven't seen the 90s Shining, I haven't seen the 97 Shining, just because I heard it was bad, and I was like, I can believe it. It's a TV movie, I don't need to watch. But I heard that they do the grass cut animals. What are they called?
The
like
hedge,
the
like,
hedge animals.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in the book they actually attack,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought it was really cool and super cheesy, but I thought it was sick. And I was like, "Whoa, that's fucking cool!" Like, obviously they're not going to do that in Kubrick's Shining. It's too that would be way too expensive, to do back in the day. But yeah, that I really dug that a lot, and I think that's where I go. I like the book better just because the hedge animals. And I was like, that's fucking animals. Rad. Those kids are sick. They're scary and stupidly cheesy. But I heard, I don't know if they did it in the 97, and I'm curious to see because I'm like 90s effects. Oof.
Yeah, 90s TV effects like that would be something else. Yeah, but yeah, I think Shining. I watch it every couple Halloweens at least. I think it's one of the all-time horror movies for me. And when much like you had the reaction of or a lot of people had the reaction when they were making the book sequel after so many years, when they were making a movie sequel, you're always a little bit worried when there's these legacy sequels. It's like, ooh, and it's been a while since the first one came out, and especially since no one involved, obviously Stanley Kubrick is dead. It wouldn't make any sense for any of the actors to be back in it because their characters would all be dead at this point, except for I guess the kid. But at that point, it's like you should probably recast him because I don't. That kid doesn't act anymore. Having a very talented actor like Ewan McGregor in it, because it's interesting because like we've talked about how it is a lot of a sequel to The Shining, but it really is also its own story too at the same time. It is it exists in this Shining world, and that obviously thematically comes back into it a lot, and the finale happens then a lot. But really, it is a separate thing. It is dealing with Dan Torrance, but it is also about these psychic vampires and this other girl that are completely separate, and they are able to marry them. And yeah, I really did like all the stuff that is not related to The Shining that was in this.
Yeah, and listeners remember there was always a hidden member for Underrated, and my girlfriend, she would watch everything with me, and she was even like, "Oh, cool!" She was like, "Do I have to watch The Shining?" Because I think she may have seen it when she was a kid, but I was like, "No, you could just go right into it," and that was the cool part of it. Even the book too. I feel like, yeah, obviously, watching and reading the book and watching the film is going to be helpful, but I still feel like you can still go in and watch the movie, and you're like, fine, because this is mainly, Danny's story. So it focuses him on him and Abra. So I feel like you can still get away with not having to watch the previous movie, and the book does the same thing too. And the other thing too, what I like is, or actually, I wanted to say, I think what I didn't like though was that I obviously you can't tell audience and moviegoers to be like, you can't really put in your advertising saying, hey, you don't need to watch the first one, you don't need to worry, but it's hard. But I will say the one thing I didn't like was that just the marketing was so the sequel to The Shining, and I'm like, you're kind of hurting yourself because now there's people that are like, I don't want to watch an old movie. Yeah. Why do I want to go watch an old movie so I can go watch this? And I felt that was the big thing where I'm like, oh, you missed out on something really good. And I think that's where it hurt them, because I don't think this movie did well. I thought it did.
It did not. It did really badly.
and it's rough because it's a legitimately good movie. It's just that's the thing that kind of sucks with trying to do a legacy sequel or trying to make a sequel or a remake of something that's so beloved. It's tough. It's really hard, and I think that was one thing I wasn't a fan of. Where I was like, I do wish. I don't blame Mike Flanagan. I kind of blame more the studio being like, you guys should have done that a little better because people are so enraptured. You know, we live in an age of nostalgia, and people love the thing that they saw back when they were a kid. So it's like really hard to get in there.
Yeah, and it's interesting with like I feel like these legacy sequels, it's either something like this where like it crashes and burns at the box office and makes no money, or it just is like Top Gun, where it's just like people just come out and who knows why and one will do better than the other. I think advertising obviously has a lot to do with it. Nostalgia has a lot to do with it, but I think that it was a really poor decision going back to the cut of this movie in the theatrical. For them to advertise it so heavily as the sequel to The Shining, but for them to cut out so much of the connective tissue between this and The Shining, because it's like it's like about a 30-minute difference. Like there's and almost all of that is the stuff that connects it to The Shining. Instead of cutting out other scenes that are less connected to it, they were like, oh, let's just cut out all the Shining stuff. So they were advertising it as one thing and then delivered something completely differently that didn't kind of work as a whole, and so. That's why I'm glad that was all put back here with this cut. So, do you think that this is the definitive version of it, like the Mike Flanagan director cut?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. You have to. I mean, I'm also a sucker for extended cuts and making a movie long as fuck. Like I just want more packed in there. I don't know. It's funny because now I'm in this point in my like movie watching life where I'm like, that movie better be fucking long as hell, or it better be a nice 90 minutes. I don't know why. I'm in between now. I'm kind of like if they're like, oh, it's like 2 hours and 15. I'm like, ugh, just make it 3. Like, what the fuck or whatever, So when I hear an extended cut, I'm like, oh fuck yeah, dude. Like it always ends up becoming my definitive. In a way where I'm like, yeah, that's better, clearly, because there's more in there. But it's not always the best from what I hear. I haven't seen a lot of. I haven't seen like, or actually, Aliens. I felt the extended cut. Me personally, I was like, it kind of made the movie drag a little.
You talking about Alien 1?
Aliens, the second one.
Oh, the second one. Okay,
the second one, I felt like I was like, damn, this is slow. Like I was like, I could have sworn. This was more like in-your-face, action-packed, and kind of took a while, and sometimes it dragged a little bit. But yeah, that's the only one. And even then, it's still a good movie. It's not bad. It just was like, But yeah. Me personally, I think this is a definitive cut for this movie.
Yeah, I think especially since this is a director's cut where Mike Flanagan, he directed it, he wrote it, he edited it, so it's like, yeah. Give him the reins to make his own version. And it's kind of like Warner Brothers, I think, who put this out. They were like, oh, yeah, we've got to cut it down from 3 hours to 2.5 so that we can get in extra screens or whatever. And like whenever you hear that, I feel like it never works. It's interesting you brought up Aliens because the next episode of this is going to be Alien 3. I actually just recorded that episode earlier today.
I'm shining. Whoa.
But yeah, I think that Aliens is much more of a like, okay, here's some cool extra stuff. It'll give you some interesting character stuff with Ripley and stuff like that. But it's this one, it's like, and even some of the extended editions and stuff like that, director's cuts, when they add in scenes, you're like, this is really cool, interesting context. But it feels like the stuff that is in this is like an essential version. Like you're not watching the whole movie unless you watch this one,
Absolutely.
Well, then, let me ask you, before I get into the question, was there any other stray thoughts or anything you had on Dr. Sleep?
No, but I was going to save this for the end, but it came back. It just came back to me. If you ever, this is a Shining Dr. Sleep pickup line. I remember watching the movie this is for you if you guys are, talking to a girl, guy. Well, if you're a guy talking to a girl, I guess it makes more sense. If you're trying to hit on them and they're a Stephen King fan, or they're like, oh, I love The Shining or Doctor Sleep, just be like, damn girl, are you The Shining? Because you got my dick hollering.
Oh my
That's my extra.
Right.
Oh my God.
All right. Watch out if you're at the club and you see me. I'm gonna throw that one out. If you're at like a Stephen King event, like next Halloween, you see me, I'll hit somebody. You're out there in the world.
I'm sure it'll work. It has to work.
Yeah, it's gonna work out. Yeah,
it has.
I'll be like, my friend Alan told me this would be a good line.
He told me. He loves Stephen King. He loves it. Believe him. I don't know where the fuck he got it from. But as was tradition that you started, I continued the tradition on of asking a question at the end. Although for every guest that I've been having on for this miniseries, I'm asking the same question, and that is, what's your favorite director's cut or extended edition? Well, it was for a while. Now, it's still good, and I still like it. I've been a big defender of Batman v Superman Ultimate Edition. That was my go-to a lot, and I really loved it. And then recently, with Zack Snyder being, what was it, like Joe Rogan or some shit? He said some really dumb shit about Batman, and it kind of made me go, damn, dude, like, don't appreciate that. Kind of being like, you're making, he's kind of saying that fans deify Batman, which I'm like, well, yeah, he's fucking Batman. He's huge. he's going to be here longer than we are. And he said some really dumb shit about like, oh, you got to make Batman kill, of course. And I always kind of was like one of those people who was like, well, Michael Keaton, Val Kilmer, even Christian Bale Batmans have all killed. I mean, the only good ones technically are Adam West, George Clooney, and Robert Pattinson. So I'm like, you can't give it all. You can't blame Ben Affleck, or you can't blame that Batman. And then now I'm kind of like, God damn it, you're a fucking idiot. Like, why'd you say that? So it's kind of tainted my view on it.
Because that, I will say, people peek behind the curtain. That was one we were originally kind of talking about a little bit.
Yeah,
and then Snyder had to say some stuff.
It was like literally days too before. Yeah. Like it was like, because I always had that in my back pocket. I was like, I'm gonna do that, and then like days before you asked me, he said that, and I was like, oh, son of a bitch. Like now I can't. Like I love the movie still. I think it's so great, the Ultimate Edition. But now I'm a little more like, well, I guess I'll appreciate the Snyder cut a little more now. At least that one's kind of like, that was a whole big deal. But yeah, I'm trying to think other ones. But yeah, the first one, I'll just go with the first one that came to mind, was BVS Ultimate Edition. For now, it'll probably change, but yeah.
Yeah, I do think that one for me, like I do think Snyder is a guy who I think him, Flanagan, or like, Ridley Scott. Like I feel like the director's cuts are always better, And I think if you ask me my most improved director's cut, I would say Batman versus Superman, honestly, because I feel like a lot of the director's cuts that I like a lot are like, I'm like, the theatrical is also pretty good. This one's better. It's more complete, whatever. But like, I really didn't like the theatrical cut of BVS at all. And I think that the director's cut, Ultimate Edition, whatever it's called, was a massive improvement.
Yeah. Like I said, I still love it a lot. I think I'm just a little like butthurt. But yeah, that was my absolute go-to. Like I was able to pop it on and I'll sit the whole 3 hours and watch the whole thing.
Yeah, very nice, very nice. Well, Alan, thank you for coming back to the chair. The chair is always ready and waiting for you. So I'm glad that you were able to come back and talk about, like, you're always were Underrated's resident horror guy. So had to have you talk about this one. Absolutely perfect. I know you do some other podcast stuff too now. You got the OVA Midnight Club. Is there anything that you want to mention with that?
So I just want to throw it out there. Yeah, so we got, we have a couple new shows. We were kind of bringing in some new cast, I shouldn't say cast members, but, new members in. And the one that we just started is, if you're a big anime fan, we kind of came up with this idea for the OVA Midnight Club. OVA stands for Original Video Animation. And that was kind of back in the day, when a production company, anime company would make a film, if they didn't have enough money to make like a whole show, but they had enough money to just make a quick, 3-episode series, and it's about like, maybe 3 hours long or something, but it's like really high quality animation. And that's kind of what we grew up. Now anime's changed and you don't really hear about OVAs as much. So it was kind of like a podcast where we're gonna talk about all kinds of anime, but we also want to kind of introduce people to like the old ones that we grew up with that are almost kind of forgotten now, just because I even hear people going that they don't like old animation, where I go, the fuck are you talking about? It's way more beautiful, but maybe I'm just a little biased. But yeah, OVA Midnight Club, that's the big one, that's the big anime one, so we would appreciate you guys coming over and listening, and hopefully learning a little bit about some older animes.
Yeah, it's good stuff. There's a lot of old animes you guys were talking about that I had never even heard of, so it was really interesting. I had to add some stuff to the watch list after that. But yeah, thank you once again for coming back and guest hosting on this episode and talking Dr. Sleep and The Shining and DVD director's cuts and all this good stuff. If anybody out there wants to hear any more of my stuff, just look up Underrated Movie Podcast anywhere. It's on all the platforms. If you could rate us 5 stars, it helps the show get noticed a lot. If you want to help in a more monetary way, we also have the Underrated Movie Podcast Patreon. So that's just patreon.com/Underrated Movie Podcast, where I do 2 bonus podcasts. There's Infinity Stones and Dragon Bones about the MCU, and Underdogs about sports movies. Check those both out there. And then I also do the Midnight Film Society, which is on Mondays where Underrated is not released. I am the co-host for my friend Damien, talking about recently released films, things of that ilk. Just kind of sometimes we'll do top lists or discuss certain topics, or we might just be talking about whatever movie came out and needs to be reviewed. So that's always a bunch of fun. But yeah, that about does it. Alan, thank you once again for coming back. Really had a fun time chatting with you.
Oh yeah, thank you so much for having me. Like I said, it's always nice to talk about some underrated movies. And yeah, and sorry, I forgot to plug Undercast Company. Go check them out. That's I forgot to say that.
Yep, definitely check all that out. And until then, I'll see you guys all next time.
All things serve the beam. Have a good one.